guys, welcome once again to Her Story in the Making, presented by Club Fantasy and Women of Fantasy Football, powered by Fantasy Alarm. I'm your host, Britt Flinn. While you're there, please make sure to like and subscribe both the Club FFL YouTube channel and the Fantasy Alarm channel. We've got some really super excited stuff coming up, but we're not here to talk about that. We are here to talk with our guest, Jen Polvogt. Jen, how are you tonight?
Doing so great. That intro is so awesome that you guys have. It's just like, that's some pump up music.
It's real vibey, right?
Yeah.
Like, just let's get going. Let's get in the groove. Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. We've got a couple people in the chat right now. We've got Toronto Dave pumping
Hi,
you
Dave.
up. Jen, and then the little party emojis. Love to see that. Anybody else in the chat, guys, please put your questions in there. We'll try to get to them throughout the course of this interview. But let's go ahead and jump in if you're ready. So you've been involved in competitive sports for a very long time. What sports have you done, and kind of what was that like, and how did that prepare you for playing fantasy football?
So I played lacrosse competitively from junior high, and being from a landlocked state like Colorado, lacrosse was not a thing here. East Coast, yes, but our coach, she went to Princeton, and played lacrosse at Princeton. So she had children my age and older than me, younger than me, and she approached the school, our junior high, to start this club program. And my friends and I were like, yeah, let's, I guess, do that. I mean, okay. So I did that and continued on through high school and my freshman year of college. And then my siblings and I started competitive swimming when I was 5 all the way through till I was 17. And that's a sport, man. Like, it's so individualized, and you're part of a team, but not part of a team at the same time, because you're, jumping off the blocks by yourself in a tight Speedo when you're 15, 16 years old. It's just like, oh my God, I'm really out here, aren't I? Here I am, world. So I don't know if that really prepared me for where I am now. I mean, I've always loved football on and off throughout my life. I am one of 4 children, and I'm really the only one who connected with my dad over sports. Like, my oldest brother was into music. Then my next brother was into, like, he should have been born in the Renaissance period, like archery and axe throwing and things like that. And then my sister, also musical, but being the runt of the family, kind of did a whole bunch of things. But I mean, I watched football, baseball, and basketball with my dad, and that was kind of our thing for a really long time. It still is now.
I imagine you guys were Broncos fans
Growing
yes. up in the prime of the Broncos era, and so that was a really fun time. Yes, so that had to have been a super fun time. I kind of have a similar story with my dad and the Cowboys era. Those were our glory days in the 90s. So that's kind of such a fun time to get involved in football when your team is riding that high, and it kind of sticks with you for life, right?
Yeah, it does.
And we've got Nate in the chat.
Oh my God.
I think he knows you.
Yeah, we know each other.
Toronto Dave, shout out lacrosse. Miss Rachel, the Tootsie Pop, is in here. Mr. Scampers, always supportive. Great to have you in here. So you got started playing fantasy football kind of by chance. And I feel like we have a really similar story in that regard, but you got really good really fast. Tell us a little bit about your first experience with fantasy football and what that was like.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I got really good really fast. I just got really lucky that one time. From what I remember, and I'll be very transparent here, because Britt, I told you a little bit of the story, but
that's why I say it's similar.
My aunt was in town, and I mean, we were having dinner, but Nate had this thing where he was going to go down to Old Chicago. If you're from Denver, you know Old Chicago. They have like 1,000 beers on tap and this amazing pizza. So he was going to go downtown and draft with his T-Mobile crew. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to stay here with my aunt. I rarely see her. Ended up heading downtown to meet him later on. And he wanted me to draft. And I was like, okay. I mean, I'm removed from the sport as far as knowing all these individual players, their chemistry with the teams, their strengths, their weaknesses. And it was just like, what the hell? For fun, let's do it. Let's just do it. And my brother and his girlfriend at the time ended up coming down to Chicago at the same time. And we were playing pool and I was making these just like ridiculous random picks. I mean, this was practically before the time of internet. There was no internet on phones yet. That was for sure. Like we all had the flip phone, like Motorola's. And so I was just picking at random. We had the draft board and everything. It was like in the league, like the beginning days of the league, if you're familiar with that show. And my first draft pick was Chad Ochocinco, and he basically won the season for me. And then I got so drunk that I passed out in the back of the car and they drove me home. And it was like, okay, well, I guess that was that. And then managed the team throughout the season and ended up winning, which is like the most annoying story, right? Like this newbie comes along who knows nothing and manages to win. It's like, that is so annoying.
No, I don't think that's annoying at all. I think it's annoying possibly for the fragile men who are in the league, because I had a similar story. People accused my husband of drafting my team for me. And I was like, no, I was zigging when others zagged, baby. And that's what you do. And that tends to win you leagues more often than not. And so I think that's a super cool story. How did that experience carry over into the next season and the next season? Did you adjust your draft strategy or was it?
I mean, I didn't really start getting into like really legit until 2015. So for the next several years, it was just like, well, I kind of know what's going on, kind of not. And zagged where others were zigging, as you said. And I don't think I won again for, I mean, maybe up until the last couple of years. But I was only in one home league, which we still have. And we started that home league in 2015. So that's been going about 8 years. And I've come in second, I've come in third. But obviously my strategy is far different than it was as a newbie who occasionally watched football to a person who's watching Red Zone 7 hours every Sunday and then Monday and then Thursday and in it, all the time.
Yes. Rachel asks, was Nate proud or pissed that you won?
Proud. He's always been proud of me for everything. Yep. I'm the one who gets pissed when he wins. Yeah.
Same here. We will always argue, my husband and I, over, well, you beat me and now you knocked me out of second place or first place or whatever. We kind of have that dynamic. Scamper says, drunk draft flex. Love that. And then Nate, you crushed our home league in 2018 and 2019 as well. So I think you're selling yourself short a little bit there.
I guess I am the worst. So as far as like fantasy football analysis goes, I have to try so hard to remember these things because they're such a blur. First of all, I mean, 2018, 2019, I had just had a baby. Like I'm not remembering anything at that point in time. And then I mean, I remember the Super Bowl this year, but Nate can spout off stats from like the 1988 Super Bowl. And I'm like, I was probably shooting Barbies in my backyard with bow and arrow. Like, I don't know. So he's right. I mean, I'm sure he's right, but I don't remember.
I love that. A good humble queen we have going on here. But you started writing with In Between Media during COVID times. How did you get started with them? And when did you decide that you actually wanted to begin creating content instead of just playing fantasy as a fan?
So my husband, Nate, actually got the job first. Seth Wilcock, who's the founder of IBT, he put out this tweet that was like, looking for writers. If you're interested, hit me up. it's unpaid, to be clear. Like, you're going to do this for free. And Nate was like, why not? Like, I'm going to go for it. He has been playing fantasy football since they had to write out the scores on paper and fax it in and do all that weird stuff in the newspaper. So, it was a fantasy for him to ever even pretend like he could break into a place in a setting like this. And so he and Seth really got the ball rolling. And it was probably a month or two into it that we had been having weekly phone calls with Seth after hours with a few drinks and just shooting the what. And he was like, why don't you come write? And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. Like, I guess actually I do have a story. Like, I legit have memories from being a child and I have things to say. I don't know if anybody's going to read them, but yeah, let's put that pen to paper and let's do this. So that was really the beginning of it. Got my Twitter account. Nate and I had a Twitter account, a joint one in, I want to say 2009 when Twitter first started popping. We were like, what's a twatter? What is a tweeter? We don't understand this. And never did anything with it. But then Nate created a new Twitter handle in 2020. And so I jumped on board and was welcomed by the community. And now I've forgotten even what you've asked me.
No, I think you summed that up really well. Did you have any experience in writing or broadcasting, podcasting, anything like that before you started with IBT, or was this solely built on your love for fantasy football?
This was all brand new. And I would say I didn't even have a love of fantasy football at that time. I mean, coming into it with Seth, it was like, dude, I don't know enough. Like, I can't write fantasy football. And he's like, he was very comforting and encouraging and was like, do what you can. We'll work on this together. And so really, I started diving real deep on players and stats and all that stuff 3 years ago. But I loved writing about being a mom and being a child of the 80s and 90s. And I'm sure there are endless stories about that I can't remember, but I loved sharing that part of my life because I have had so many good and bad things happen that's relatable. And just to be that person who's like, hey, you've had a miscarriage? Me too. Reach out. I'm here to talk. Or, hey, you used to vacation at the Lake of the Ozarks in the summer. Hey, me too. Let's talk about that. Where'd you stay? So it was really a way to connect with people that I have found the joy in this.
And that's the great thing about IBT, that they do frame all of their content in relatable stories. And it's a very fun, relaxing read for the most part. It's relatable. And I think that you do a great job in incorporating your life experiences and then tying it back into football. It's so interesting to see how you just connect the dots between that. And that's what makes you such a great writer. And you kind of mentioned something that makes a good transition into the next question, because you and Nate both create content. Do you guys ever bounce ideas off each other? Is there any kind of competitive element? How does that dynamic work with both of you guys writing for the same site?
We bounce stuff off each other all day long, every day. I mean, one of these days we'll post a picture of like, this is where I sit and this is where he sits. And this is we're writing and or editing or creating thumbnails for something. That's all Nate, not me. I don't create thumbnails, but we're not really competitive in that way. It's very supportive. His frustrations are my frustrations. His successes are my successes and vice versa. And we're really annoying in that way. I think some people are rooting for us to, be neck and neck, but we were together 24/7 before the pandemic. So once the pandemic hit, we were like, and
Yeah,
there's
what's
nothing,
different?
yeah, there's nothing different here besides the kid. The kid was home all day, every day, and very, very needy. So that was a big difference. But otherwise, it's always been the two of us and will continue to be the two of us. We're
Well,
only competitive in Uno.
oh my gosh, Uno or Yahtzee? I cannot. I will flip a
Get out
coffee
of here.
table.
I will flip that coffee table and then slam a drink on your head and be done with it.
Yep.
I'm done.
No,
Yeah.
we're more alike than we even knew before this interview.
Yes.
But you mentioned the baby. How does, because that's a very new thing, and especially since you and Nate had been together, um, like you said, 24/7 before the pandemic. How did bringing a kid into the world kind of affect how you guys balanced out creating content and how you guys balanced playing football, watching football, things like that? And I'm really interested in just how you are a super mom, because I could never
Mhm.
imagine being a super mom.
I don't know if I'm a super mom, but I am a mom. And when I first had our son in 2017, I was working in the corporate world. I was the boss, I was in charge. And after about, I guess he was about 11 months old, I was like, I am missing out on too much. I've worked for somebody else for far too long. Nate was a stay at home dad. And I was like, I'm quitting. I'm quitting. I put in my 2 weeks and I've been done since August 2018. So since then, it's much easier to co parent when you're around each other all the time, because there's a different dynamic when a mom or a dad is home with the kid. They know the kid's nuances in and out because they're literally there 24/7. So I can see how a stay-at-home situation with only one parent can be very difficult, because then the next parent comes in and gets to be the fun parent who's somewhat energized, brings new energy to that dynamic. But for us, it was like, no, we got to go to Costco. All three of us are going to Costco. We're going to go to the park. All three of us are going to the park. And I think that has actually made our relationship stronger, because it's not like there's no go ask your mom, go ask your dad. Or I mean, we do have a little bit of that where it's like, well, what did daddy say? You want another jelly bean? Like, okay, did you already ask daddy? Because, I'm upstairs and he's downstairs and you're downstairs. So there is a little bit of that. But otherwise, we're on the same page. We both take him to school every day. We bring him home from school every day together. And 99% of the world does not understand how this operates and how this works. But mutual respect for each other and listening, try empathy, trying to understand what the other person is going through, maybe. But also, we've been together for, I think, 17 years here soon. So we've had a lot of experience working through the bumpy patches that every couple has.
That's so awesome. And I think you've been overruled. I think everybody in the chat is agreeing that you are super mom. Toronto Dave, I trust Nate. Tootsie Pop, we know that Jen is no doubt a super mom, crushing it. Love her stories. So you've been
Thank you so
overruled,
much.
unfortunately.
Well, thank you, everyone.
But we will switch gears a little bit. So going from IBT, you're now an editor at Fantasy Pros Betting Pros and the lead editor for Razzball Fantasy. So how do you approach editing versus content creation? Do you approach it in that you would edit it the way that you would write it, or do you keep the writer's voice? What's your process there?
Oh, it's so important to keep the writer's voice. I mean, anybody out there who's used Grammarly Pro knows that it can make suggestions to be more confident or to add clarity. And it's like, I know the writers who are writing these, and I'm like, that's not your voice. We're not changing that. We're not going to make it sound more confident, or, the readability score. We're not going to change anything to make the readability better, because this is this person's voice and they wrote it. They took the time to write it, and we're going to leave it. I mean, major grammatical issues aside, and really working with and developing writers, especially with IBT, where we can say, hey, I think this is a better direction for you to go, or this is what I'm noticing in your writing patterns, and giving feedback. I mean, constant feedback is the only way anybody gets any better. So editing for me is it's so, you complete something and it's out there in the world. It's like, you wrote it, you have this diamond, I'm going to shine it up, and we're going to put it out there the best we can together. So it's just the completion part of it is so satisfying for me.
And that's again why you're fabulous at what you do, because you just make everybody around you better. Um, I've seen it. Everybody's seen it in the chat. We don't need to go on anymore about that. But you're so good at creating so many different kinds of content and with editing. So, what is your favorite kind of content to produce? And how do you approach creating different kinds of media?
I mean, that's kind of a tripod question. I enjoy my writing. At a certain point, there does come a time when it's like, how can I retell this story of my life that's still engaging, especially going through COVID, because we love to travel. And that's when a lot of our mishaps and mayhem and funny things would happen to us. And so without that portion of our lives for that couple of years, it was really hard to come up with content. You know, I stole a car when I was 15. It was my dad's business partner's car. So it's not like I had jacked a car from the streets, but, you know, things like that, and digging deep into who I am and why I am the way that I am has brought a closeness with other people, and has also given me an outlet to lay it out there and be a legacy somewhere for my son to go one day to be like, damn, my mom stole a car. Like, who is this person? So I love that part of it. But I also, like I said, love the editing to be able to deliver a finished product that is beautiful and says something. It has been beyond what I wanted to do, that I knew I wanted to do.
And you're very good at that. Again, you're so good at conveying and tying in a specific instance in your life to football and to sports, and it's just wonderful. And you've had so many great articles and great podcasts, but is there a particularly favorite moment of those in your career?
You know, my favorite moment was our first time going to the expo. After everything had been lifted, I mean, we were still kind of masking, but kind of not. And to meet all of these people who we had forged relationships with over the course of 2 years, who were still in the space, you know, because there were a lot of content creators who fell off because they were like, I'm not making money at this, which is totally understandable. It's not easy to make money within the space, but to just be with those people and feel that energy. And even the next year, Dave's first year was last year, and it was awesome to meet him in person. You know, just meeting all of these people face to face and to hang out with them and share a beer or 20 or 40. And that experience is something that you don't know until you've been there. And why we are like, please, everybody come, is because it is truly amazing. And I was trepidatious going. I was like, how do I fit in with all these guys? Like, yeah, I know them, but do I know them? Like, how do I do this? You know, especially as a woman in this space. I think that year I was definitely one of a handful. And last year we had a bigger showing of women, which was awesome. And hopefully
Yeah,
this year, even more.
exactly. You took the words right out of my mouth. I hope that this year we have even more people, a bigger panel for women of fantasy football, and to show that we're there and that we know what we're talking about, and even a bigger contingent of guys there who are there to support us and who just kind of lend themselves and blend themselves into this family. But we always know, hate to get a little bit on the darker side of things, but we always know that there are people out there who don't exactly exhibit positivity. So we're going to switch gears and ask you, what are some of the more challenging things that you've faced in your career and in the fantasy football space?
You know, I don't know if this is necessary. I don't think that it is necessarily a woman thing, but the imposter syndrome of I, knowing a stat or being able to join a conversation and be found out that you're a fraud when really you're not. It's just like, I just don't know that. And proving myself to myself that I can do this. And it takes time to learn these things. And I feel like the majority of the men in this space, at least the ones who I interact with, they're very understanding and welcoming and open to discussion, and that it's okay to say, I don't know who you're talking about. I don't know that player. I can't tell you what I think about them in this certain scheme. Like it's about everybody's mutual enjoyment of this space and this topic that I think is more important than proving who knows more about what. And I've felt very welcomed. I haven't had a whole lot. I have had some, haters coming at me, but whatever, dude. You're hiding behind your keyboard. I don't know
Like,
you. You're not one of
like
my
you don't even
everyday
have a
people.
profile picture.
Right? You have 0 followers and you joined January of 2019. You're literally out there bullying, and okay, if that's what you need to do to make yourself feel better, that's fine, but to each their own, I guess.
Exactly. And I think that's very good advice. Before we go to the next question, guys, we're kind of getting up against it. So if you guys have any questions that you want to ask Jen, throw them in the chat so that we can get to them before this convo ends all too quickly. I can't believe we're already close to the end of it. But
I
that
know.
was very good advice that you just offered about kind of shrugging off the haters and being confident in yourself. But what other advice would you give to others trying to create a career in the fantasy sports world? And what do you wish you knew when you started?
I mean, it's the old adage of it's not what you know, it's who you know. Making those connections, being sincere, being your true self, offering something to the community, and knowing it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, we've been at this for 3 years now, and it has been a long and hard road. And I hope we have done things to change the way that this whole industry operates. Not we as in Nate and me, but all of us who kind of came into it during COVID or maybe a little bit before and have worked our butts off to make things easier, work harder, or work smarter, not harder kind of deal. So, me 3 years ago, I would have been like, just be patient. It's your least favorable attribute. You are not a patient person. I'm way more patient now that I have a kid, but patience and hard work. Like it literally is. You have to put in the time, you have to put in the effort, you have to do the work. There's no easy way into this industry, into this space. Being sincere and genuine just has helped us go that extra distance.
And I think that's absolutely right. And everybody in the chat, everybody watching can speak to that. I think that's why they are endeared to you, because you guys are such genuine and nice people. Nate popped in the chat and said, "Who is your favorite fantasy analyst?"
Shut
I don't
up
know
and
if he
get
was
out of
being
here.
a little self-aggrandizing there, but
Yeah.
but we're getting up to it. Any more questions, throw them in the chat. But since this show is called Her Story in the Making, tell us how you see your story continuing and some goals you're setting for yourself in this space in the future.
Yeah. Every day is ever changing here. I mean, I was not expecting, nor was it even a goal of mine, nor did I think I even belonged in the Fantasy Pros, Betting Pros world. And Jeff Bell reached out and was like, "Hey, would you ever want to edit?" And I was like, I mean, yeah, I've been editing for IBT. I would love to do that. I love polishing things. Let's do that. And I met with Blaine, and it just all kind of took off over there. So, as far as future goals, I think my goal is to be flexible and roll with the punches and say yes to opportunities that come my way that I think I can legitimately see going forward, and saying no to other opportunities that I maybe wouldn't have in the last couple of years, because we got some advice early on that was like, say yes to everything, say yes to everything. And we did. And now that we're here, it's like, now it's okay to say no to some things. So I don't know if I answered your question. Otherwise, I want to still be here, moving forward. Just as far as where I am, I'm open to new opportunities and flexible with the things I do, because I didn't know I loved editing until I tried it. So
That's all very good advice. It's been such a pleasure having you on, and I'm so sad that this is over. It's been such a fast 30 minutes, but can you tell everybody watching where they can find your work and where they can follow you on socials?
Yep. In-betweenmedia.com. You can find all of our work there. I'm at Jen Polvogt, which isn't the easiest name to spell, but Polvogt. And that's, I think I'm terrible. I will tell you that, admittedly, that Facebook and Instagram are not my thing. Even Twitter's not really my thing. So I like, I'll tweet my life. I will not necessarily tweet my football takes, but I'm everywhere. It's just a matter of how often I'm active in those places.
Well, I love it. Again, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you guys for watching. Remember to like and subscribe to the Fantasy Alarm YouTube channel, the Women of Fantasy Football YouTube channel, the Club FFL YouTube channel, all the channels. There's too much to miss throughout the three of those. Y'all can't afford to not sign up. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another really special guest. And join us then. Jen, thank you so much again.
Thank you for inviting me.